They work.
Okay.
2020.
You're going to be stuck editing this anyway. Good evening. Welcome to another fabulous edition of ITEN Second Thursday Adventure Cafe. I'm Melissa Grizzle. I'm the Director of Entrepreneur Development with ITEN. And tonight we're really excited to talk to you all a little bit about our Investor Readiness Program, or most people call it Mock Angels, and showcase some of our most recent graduates from that program. So we've got 3 of them here tonight, but I wanted to pause awkwardly. No, I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of background and context about our program. So the Investor Readiness Program, or the Mock Angel pitch sessions, started. They're almost as old as ITEN itself. So ITEN started in 2008. And Mock Angels followed shortly thereafter in 2009, and in that time, since then, we've had 73 graduates that have raised over $200 million. So that's fabulous, and I'm sure it's at least that much. Because as you can probably believe, if you've been tracking companies for 10 years and they've been growing and scaling and doing fabulous things, they might forget to call every once in a while, but we know for sure that they've raised over $200 million. Some past graduates that you might be familiar with in the St. Louis region are Pixel Press, Bandura Cyber, Label Insight, Debt Commerce, and Gift-A-Meal, to name a few. But so they're all continuing to hang here in the St. Louis region and grow their companies and really have economic impact long after they've been through our programs. And so, as I said, Mock Angels is the oldest program that we have, because when you gather together, when you start an entrepreneur support organization and you've gathered some fabulously talented mentors, and you turn to entrepreneurs and say, what do you need from us? They, of course, will say, money. And when you say, I'm sorry, we do not have any of that, they'll say, well, how about if you help me get ready to ask other people for money? We can do that. So that's how our Mock Angel pitch sessions started. They are designed to replicate what it would be like to present to an early stage VC or an angel group. Our companies are given 15 minutes to give their pitch, and then we give them tough love Q&A like an investor would, and also give them feedback on their pitch deck in general, their narrative, how well they take feedback, how well they handle the Q&A. So they're really put through a process that can get them ready to stand up and tell their story. And the Mock Angels program has grown over the last, evolved and expanded over the last decade, adding about 6 years ago when we first launched our Entrepreneurs in Residence program. We were able to give more dedicated support to those companies that are getting ready for the Investor Readiness Program and going through that. About 4 years ago, we added the due diligence preparation. So they're not just doing the Mock Angels pitch sessions, but they're also getting help building a deal room. So they make sure that they have the contents that an investor is going to look for, because as we know, investors are not going to sit around and wait for you to get your ducks in a row. They're going to move on to another opportunity, so we help them do that. And then just this year, we added also helping them and giving them feedback on a 2-minute elevator pitch and their executive summary. So they really graduate with the whole package, the toolbox that they need to be able to go out and ask for other people's money. And we then also introduce them, announce their graduation to our investor network, and then continue to support them as they move through that fundraising process. So that, I think, I just wanted to be able to give you guys some context about what these companies have been through. As most of you know, if you're a tech product company, you can join ITEN, at any stage. But for the Investor Readiness Program, we do have an additional application. So these companies, applied for that program and been accepted because they were demonstrating product market fit and traction in the market. So while you can join ITEN at any stage, you need to be past idea stage, past validating your business model, really showing that there's a market for what you're doing, and you can tell a story around that investors will be interested in. So these are more of our later stage companies that are going through this process. And so that is the basic design of the program, and I think that kind of helps you to understand kind of what they've been through. So tonight we're going to hear from, like I said, our 3 most recent graduates, HomeTraq, Phase 3, and Rezilient, in that order, just alphabetical. We'll let them give their pitch and give us a little bit of an update of what what's been going on with them and what's their goals for 2020. And then we'll have some Q&A after they've all 3 presented, where you can ask them some more casual questions and have a little more discussion about the process or anything else that you want to ask them. So, without further ado, HomeTraq. With the clicker?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
okay, let me get you pulled up. You want the...
Unless you want me to yell.
no, you can. Are you gonna just don't stand with your slides on your face? Then it will just look like a cheat sheet. Hold on. Sorry, I gotta shift this.
I'm trying. This doesn't work against my time, bro.
No, it doesn't. No. There we go. Oh, you're good. All right, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. I didn't know it is. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear me. My name is Mark Borman, and I am chairman and co-founder of HomeTraq. If any of you have recently been looking to buy a home, then you know recently that you know firsthand that the real estate experience is outdated. In fact, it really hasn't changed a lot in more than 100 years, but we now demand things instantaneously, and we're looking for that instant gratification to be delivered through our phones. We're already finding homes on our own, but we still have to call real estate agents to tour them. And many times we don't receive return phone calls. Or worse, we use Zillow and get bombarded with phone calls, texts, and emails. They estimate now that 74% of all consumers are finding the homes that they want to tour and get into on their own without the assistance of a real estate agent. So the modern home buyer is screaming for an alternative of no hassle and no commitment. HomeTraq is that solution. HomeTraq is transforming the home buying experience by putting the consumer completely in control with an on-demand home showing solution. Very simply, here's how it works. In the same way that you use Uber to quickly find a driver when you need a ride, use HomeTraq to quickly find a real estate agent to tour a home. You pick the home, the date, and the time that's convenient for you, and an agent will confirm the appointment within minutes, all without having to speak to anyone. But when you meet the agent at the property, it's on your terms of no hassle, no commitment, no obligation, and definitely no solicitations after the showing. So while I've explained to you how we're solving a consumer problem, we're solving a customer problem for the banks, because they lose 93% of the mortgage opportunities out of their own customer base every year. That's right, 93%. And the reason is because agents refer their customers to the competition long before the bank even knows their own customer is shopping for a home. It's a no-brainer for the banks to distribute the app to their customers as a new way to immediately tour homes without commitment to the agents. Obviously, the agents in our network are thrilled to meet home buyers who are actively touring homes. HomeTraq is completely monetized by receiving an industry standard 25% referral fee on every closed real estate transaction. Our current traction is a 1% conversion, which helps banks more than double their annual production. So when banks distribute the app to their customers as a new way to tour homes, for every 100,000 customers that they distribute to, that just translates into $1.3 million of revenue for HomeTraq, and it becomes immediately scalable. These customers can come from one large bank or several banks in any given market. We've got great traction going. We've already got more than 10 distribution partners. more than 20 real estate brokers with over 150 real estate agents active in the platform here in St. Louis. And just in the last 90 days, we've generated over 600 leads that have resulted in more than 300 home showing requests. So why would a bank want to distribute the HomeTraq app? Because a typical bank's database, 7 to 9% of their customers buy a home every year. And the average bank captures less than 1/2 of 1%. So with our 1% conversion, we help them more than double their annual production. Our goal is to have an exit strategy of 3 to 5 years, because when banks distribute the app to their customers, it becomes immediately scalable. The real estate market is a huge market. The total addressable market is $1.3 trillion of sales volume every year. So it's ripe for a disruptor like for HomeTraq. So why us and why now? My partner Brett and I have more than 45 years of mortgage, banking, and real estate experience. So we know firsthand how HomeTraq fixes all the distinct pain points across these channels. We've also surrounded ourselves with advisors and investors in the real estate, mortgage, and banking industry to help us with our national expansion. Fortunately, we've gone through the Investor Readiness Program. We've raised and closed and funded on $750,000 of funding so far for a $1 million round, but we are looking for additional investors to complete our round. We'll use those funds for our expansion to Kansas City and a third market in 2020 and hire approximately 13 employees over the next 6 to 12 months. So I thank you for listening and learning about HomeTraq. And the next time that you want to tour a home, give it a try. There's no obligation. Just visit us at HomeTraq, and that's HomeTraq.com. Thank you. Going right down the line.
Yep.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Lucas Rydberg. I'm the CEO of Phase 3. We're a digital health company that's focused on improving access to cardiac rehab. Cardiac rehab is a proven way to recover from heart disease. It's a very structured 3-month program. And its participants see a 1% reduction in mortality per session they attend. Patients who complete the entire program double their chances of living an extra 5 years. They reduce their chance of being readmitted to the hospital by a third, and they improve the quality of their life. It's a really great program to help people recover from heart disease. Despite all these awesome benefits to the program, the system of cardiac rehab in the US is broken. Just 20% of eligible patients enroll in the program. So 80% of people who are eligible for cardiac rehab never enroll. What's worse though is that 95% of patients who are eligible don't complete the whole course of treatment. So most people actually aren't getting to see the great benefits that cardiac rehab has to offer. So the obvious question is why? Well, there's a lot of barriers to just about everyone involved in the process. First of all, cardiac rehab is extremely time-consuming and really inaccessible for patients. They have to drive to the hospital 3 days per week, spend hours a day there, and pay expensive insurance copays each time they go. It's also not very common that patients are really well educated about the benefits of cardiac rehab too. On top of all these barriers to the patient though, cardiac rehab departments actually typically lose money for hospitals. So it can be really hard for them to try and find the motivation to sort of invest more into growing their cardiac rehab departments. And so low utilization paired with the lack of data, also that's being provided to the payers, doesn't give them a whole lot of motivation to invest more into changing the system either. So the cardiac rehab system in the US stagnates. Phase 3 is fixing the cardiac rehab system in the US by helping hospitals implement home-based cardiac rehab programs. This allows patients to participate in cardiac rehab from home, eliminating all of the hassle of driving to the hospital multiple days per week, but still being monitored by their clinicians. This is also a reimbursable process. It's actually cost efficient enough to transform the cardiac rehab departments from a money loser into a money maker. So our platform consists of a web dashboard that clinicians use to create and administer individualized care plans, a mobile app that patients use to view and complete their assigned care plan tasks, and connected devices that patients use to collect biometric data. As a few recent updates on our business, we recently completed a pilot program at SluCare Cardiac Rehab. We enrolled 25 patients. It was IRB approved research. funded by the American College of Cardiology. We demonstrated an increase in enrollment of 68% in cardiac rehabilitation. We also demonstrated, as compared to their traditional cardiac rehab program, a 3-fold increase in completion for cardiac rehab with our platform. We also demonstrated some clinical efficacy, so some improvements in functional capacity for patients using our platform relative to traditional cardiac rehab. We also recently participated in a startup competition in Denver, Colorado called the Prime Health Challenge, where we took home the Rural Health Prize. And that's a competition that's actually leading to hospital implementations that are starting this quarter. So we've identified the need, we've developed a product, we've built some clinical efficacy, and now we're actually out there implementing our product in commercial implementations in hospitals. So thanks for your time. I'll hand it over to Chip.
Good evening, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Okay. My voice carries, so I'll just do this. I'm Jeff Gamble. I am founder and CTO of Rezilient, where we are bringing a physical dimension to virtual care. Virtual care was supposed to revolutionize how healthcare was delivered here in the US and beyond. It was supposed to reduce costs and provide more convenient access to patients. But today, adoption has been abysmal. In outpatient settings, only 1 out of every 176 visits are actually performed virtually. And so the question is why? What has been missing thus far to keep physicians from using something that should obviously have a certain level of value for their organizations and for their patients? As regulatory barriers have fallen over the last few years, as well as reimbursement being put into place, in particular even this year, Medicare Advantage covering urban telehealth, it only left one thing. And as we went out and talked to many physicians, especially specialist physicians, we found that there was one critical thing that was missing from virtual care. They couldn't perform their normal physical exams that they performed in clinic. I don't know how many of you have ever tried virtual care, but think of it as FaceTime with your physician. And if you think of FaceTime, a physician can't examine you, they can't look in your ear, they can't listen to your heart, and they don't want to depend on someone else to do that for them, especially considering that was the core thing that they were trained to do in medical school and in residency. They want to be the ones that are in control of that examination. So at Rezilient, we decided to address this issue by adding a physical dimension. So we sell physicians a platform that gives them access to a remote network of medical robots that allows them to perform physical exams and minor procedures in real time. So as you can see on the left, with a physician at their office or at home can use a standard computer setup, and using a touch interface can digitally control the positioning of medical devices that are remotely attached to a medical robot, either at pharmacies, at other physician practices, or other locations remotely. So as you can see on the right side, we have a patient that has the examination robot that has an arm attached to medical devices. We focus primarily on dermatology and otolaryngology. And then we have the base station, as you can see here, where the patient has the ability to see the physician, and remotely virtual scribes or other virtual participants have the ability to participate in this virtual appointment. So to walk you through the process, so starting on the left, first the physician signs up with the platform, and we figure out which of their patients actually have insurance that qualifies for virtual care. Then once patients and the physician have been onboarded onto the platform, the patient is able to book virtual visits through the front desk of the physician practice. On the day of the appointment, a technician shows up to the remote location and sets up the examination robot for the appointment that's going to occur. The physician then delivers the care appropriate for the specialty and the appointment that they're performing. afterwards, and this is something that really has been kind of the carrot on the stick for physicians and solves a really, really core pain point for them, a virtual scribe is able to generate the note for them. For those of you that don't know healthcare, documentation is the #1 problem that physicians cite as to why burnout and even depression are through the roof in the healthcare sector for physicians. And then the cycle continues for future appointments. So since we graduated from the Mock Angels program or completed our first set of pitches, we were actually able to sign our first set of customers in the Chicagoland area. So we signed a clinically integrated network of private practice physicians. So for those who don't know what a clinically integrated network is, you have a set of private practices that form a loose to moderate partnership with each other for purchasing power and also building out their referral base. So within this clinically integrated network, we have 30 locations, 50 physicians. We are doing a SaaS contract with them, so it's monthly recurring revenue. So that's $10,000 monthly recurring revenue for that one customer. And then we also charge them $9 for video visits and $19 for robotic visits. And so if you estimate utilization, you're looking at approximately $400,000 of annualized value for that contract. And so that's Medivate, is the clinically integrated network. Since also doing Mock Angels, our technology partners, Canova, who does some of the robotics for us, and then Verizon is our communications partner that we've been working with. And as of yesterday, we found out that we are now participants in the X-Prize competition, which is a $10 million robotic avatar competition. So that was really, really exciting for us. So just quickly, since I have 30 seconds, going over our 2020 outlook. One thing that we really had to figure out was how do we roll out? This is a big vision, and the physicians actually told us exactly what to do. So the base station that I referred to earlier, physicians were very interested in installing that in their practices so that they can use that to allow families to come into the appointments remotely, and then also to do documentation for their in-person visits. And so it's a way for us to actually get integrated into their workflow before, over time, as you can see, as we get to October 2020, we actually introduce the ability to do remote examinations through the medical robots, where physicians can do cross-referrals with each other. So if you're at your dermatologist's office, they can refer you out to another physician who can immediately do an examination and appointment on you while you're still at that dermatologist's office. So that's everything I had. Again, I'm Jeff Gamble. I don't have any cards on me, so I apologize. So if you want to reach me, I'm jeff@resilient.io, so please feel free to shoot an email. I'm happy to get back to you, but thank you.
You have this much for your head.
I'll make sure.
All right. Where'd the microphone? Not everybody is Jeff. Yeah. Is this back on? Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Let's give our presenters one more round of applause. And before I open it up to you guys, I'm thinking of fabulous questions, because I don't have a big long list of ones, but I just wanted to have, if you guys could each take a minute and just talk about what you found most valuable about the program, or maybe something that surprised you, or something that was really helpful in moving you forward from where you were. Jeff, do you want to go ahead and just humor the rest of us?
I'll humor you.
Yeah, like people that feel better about themselves.
So for us, I would say that we were kind of in a unique position where our company had originally started as a medical device company that was servicing the specialty physician space. So when we came to the Mock Angels program, we had recently made a drastic pivot. So we had previously raised some angel money, so we knew how to talk to investors, but we had a new vision that was much larger than what we had before. And we were struggling to communicate it. And so it's not a surprise to me that after the program, we were able to find customers and find partners, et cetera, because we really had to work through how do you sit down with someone who's an intelligent person and communicate a big complex concept down into something that they can understand in 5 minutes.
Just real quick to comment on that, I think that, this was a really good example of how we work, I think, collaboratively well here in the St. Louis region. So, we share a lot of companies that also work with like Biogenerator or some other organizations that we can help them with certain things like figuring out exactly how to navigate that pivot from a more true med device play to something that has a SaaS component or something that needs something very specifically tied to the tech side. So yeah, that it's been a great relationship with other organizations that sort of share you all and are part of your village that can help you grow. So yeah, go ahead.
So I'm Brett O'Daniel, co-founder of HomeTraq, and you heard from my partner Mark Gorman. That was one of the first recommendations we got when we started the ITEN program, was to pick one person as your primary presenter. So we picked with Mark. So if you're wondering why I'm talking, I thought I'd go ahead and get that out of the way. One of the main things that we got at ITEN was just brutal, honest feedback after our pitch practice. So just like the pitches we did here, you don't know how you feel about it, you think you did well, but then you have a room full of people that see these pitches all the time, and God bless them, you see hundreds of them a year, right? And then you have to think of productive things to tell people.
And not crush dreams.
Not scare people out of the room, which we've seen happen. So it's always good, and I think the biggest takeaway for me, and one of the biggest takeaways for HomeTraq, is that this is the first time the majority of the people in the room are hearing your pitch. So you have to not talk about it like you've talked about it 100 times, or you've done this presentation 100 times. You have to take a step back and realize that all the things you assume in your head that everyone knows, they don't. And this is going to be the first time they hear it, and you're going to get random questions that you thought that you addressed, and you're going to have to explain them again and not do it, like you said, without scaring someone away and sounding like you're overconfident or cocky. So that's some of the biggest takeaways.
All right, I won't take too much time with HomeTraq, but the one thing that we helped us out tremendously was just building our vault. And a vault is where all the investor information is and all your documentation, and that was a huge assistance with us, and why we're able to raise a fair amount of money in a pretty short period of time.
Thanks for that plug, because getting you guys to pay attention to that, not you specifically, just people in general, they like the sexy pitch practice, but they actually go upload documents into folders and organize things.
It's painful.
It is painful, but it definitely pays off.
Yeah, I'll second what Mark said, actually. There are two things that we really got out of Mock Angels. One of them was very practical, logistical is how to put together the due diligence folder, which is very useful for us to know how to structure all of our documents and have those reviewed by someone who knows what they're doing. But the other thing that was a little more subjective, but so extremely valuable for us, was just the practice of getting in front of a group of people who are really intelligent, they know how to critique your pitch, and having the confidence to give your pitch very strongly and deal with Q&A very well, and just always doing better than the last presentation, and just getting sort of that experience of public presenting is very important for us.
I'm just going to open it up to folks out here if you guys have questions, either for any of our companies or for any of me or Mary Louise or Connie and Haley, the rest of the ITEN staff, about our program in general. Just yell to him. Can you yell to him?
I think I can carry the one.
I'll repeat it if people can't
All right,
hear you.
I'll leave this hand up. Particularly for the two who are involved with healthcare, how many hoops did you have to go through in order to get the insurance companies and or the government, Medicare, to reimburse your physicians for what, and non-physicians for what you're offering?
Reimbursements if the video didn't.
So, and for those that don't know, there are a million people who can reimburse. So there's Medicaid, Medicare, there are private insurers, and it just depends on what state you're in as well. So for what we were doing, we were basing it off of codes that already existed. So we weren't asking insurers to create anything new, that was part of the hack for us, was to focus on things that already existed. I would say the big one that changed for us was the Medicare Advantage change this year. So typically, or historically, Medicare has only covered, they've only reimbursed for telehealth that was performed in rural settings. And even in those rural settings, the patient had to be either at a nursing home, at a rural health clinic, or at a rural hospital. And that was about it. Whereas this year, as of this month actually, Medicare Advantage, which is essentially people can now add a private option onto their Medicare plan. And now, I think over a third of people over 65 have Medicare Advantage now. And it's growing every year. They decided, you know what, it makes a lot of sense to reimburse for telehealth in urban communities, which is where 90% of the U.S. populace lives in metropolitan areas. So that's a huge deal, I think, basically for any telehealth company. So that was for us specifically.
Yes, same as Jeff. But initially we had structured our value proposition. Having a quantitative value proposition is really important in healthcare. Despite us wanting to think that it's a very altruistic industry, the numbers really do matter a lot. And we sort of started with our value proposition being based on value-based care, so improving the outcomes of the patient, reducing readmission rates, improving long-term, reducing long-term costs. And that wasn't resonating as well with our customers, even though it's really important to them, because it can be really difficult to quantify the effects, actually what that does to the bottom line of a hospital. So we designed our product, we structured it to be reimbursable under codes that already existed from a fee-for-service perspective. Our platform does still enable value-based care improvements, but what the direct reimbursement does, I'm sure this is true for you guys too, is it allows the services to be sustainable on their own while realigning those services with long-term improvements in value-based care initiatives as well.
Dick?
Great panel, great presentation. Thanks for starting ITEN, Jim. My question goes to this gentleman. Darnish Nagda presented at Missouri Victor 4 years ago. He was doing just the medical device. You guys did the pivot. Can you talk about that? It seems like I was watching on LinkedIn, you guys went to Washington University or Scandalaire Center, decided to do the pivot. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So what aspect of the pivot? I guess
how you pivoted
a lot of
now
baggage.
from a medical device to a remote.
Yeah, so why do, so the medical device,
You were formerly Dynamic Surgical.
I guess to give some
people know
context.
from
Yeah,
that
so the company was formerly Dynamic Surgical. Donish and I met while we were at Washington. Oh, yeah, Donish just walked in. So just wait for the audience now.
Yeah.
So he and I were both actually in the same lab. So my thesis lab was the lab he was doing his research rotation in his ENT residency. So it was actually out of that interaction that Dynamic Surgical started. We got about a year or so into that, and really it hit a point where, so we were focused on sleep apnea, actually, with that device. And interestingly enough, there were a couple devices that we were following very closely. And we dug deep into their clinical data, and frankly, he and I were not convinced. Donish and I took a very deep dive into the data, and both of us kind of walked away saying, I can't, in good faith, ask investors to keep betting on this thing. So it really, for us, and that's a whole other conversation as to how to pivot a company once you already have investors, and the whole thing.
That's a whole other panel, Jeff.
Whole other panel. But we successfully did that, and I would say our investors are really happy with the direction we've gone in. But I would say the real big impetus was that for us both, we had both been in situations where family members, so parents, my mom, his dad, had dealt with heart conditions. And we were both distant relatives that had to be very involved. And the question is, how do you get involved when you can't be there? That was really the core question that he and I both were dealing with in our personal lives. Donish so much to the point where he actually moved his parents down here to St. Louis just so that he could be a full-time caregiver for his dad. And so it was really that experience where kind of watching him have to go to 8 doctor's appointments every quarter, driving his dad around while he was in residency, while he was running a company, it was ridiculous. And technologically, we believe there had to be a better way, like the technology exists to make a better way. Why isn't it there, was the question we asked. I hope that answers the question.
Brandon?
I have a question more in line with the Investor Readiness Program itself for each of you. How long did it take you to get through the program? And I guess thinking about as you're going through, how long before you started feeling really ready? Like, so there might be a little bit of a gap there, but how'd the program treat you? That kind of.
Yeah, so for us, we probably took a little bit longer, and that's more on me. That's why we took a little longer to get through the program. I would say our 2 pitches, so I think it was 2 pitches?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just the two.
Our 2 pitches were maybe 2 months apart. And so I think the first one was April, the second one was June. And then after that June pitch, what was necessary for us to graduate was to finish the due diligence prep. And that was more so on me for just being slow about putting the folder together. So that portion of it is literally as fast as you want it to be. So I would say that's
You're
what
tired of me showing up on your front porch and just sit there until you get it.
And for ours, it went relatively quick. We did our initial pitch and then we had to start over. No, but that was actually part of it because we have a 3-part marketplace, so it was clearly defining as to which objective that we were going after. And it was mostly just about clearly defining the process of what our business model was and clearly communicating it. And then getting all the way through the vault and everything is definitely a longer process. I think we finished in spring of this past year, so less than a year. So our total process was less than it was just a few months.
It took us a long time, actually. We sort of failed the first time that we went through. Our first pitch didn't go very well, so we didn't come back for a second graduation pitch. So the program, you do one sort of introductory pitch, then they give you feedback and you come back for your graduation pitch. After our first introductory one, we actually didn't even come back for maybe 7 or 8 months. We sort of went back and reworked our value proposition. We actually didn't focus in that period of time. We didn't focus much on our pitch or on fundraising. We kind of just focused on running the business, which was the right thing to focus on at the time. And so we honed our value proposition. And once we came back, we actually did our 2 pitches within a month or 2 and finished due diligence within a month or so after that.
Can we add something to
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
I just wanted to also add to that,
Tell them who you are.
I'm sorry, Stephen Von Romp, entrepreneur in residence with ITEN.
And Stephen works closely with us in
Yeah.
phase 3.
Sure.
He's
So, the IRP is a formal process. It has a beginning, has an end, and different companies take a different pace, go through it. But what I think it's very important to say is that a lot of what IRP is about is what happens before they formally enter the program. It's the months, maybe even years in some cases. It's the months of preparation, of getting together with people who have been there, done that, and honing the value proposition, honing the investor pitch, honing the elevator pitch, all those things to the point that now they're really ready. They have a coherent story with all the pieces that an investor expects to hear, the competitive analysis, the go-to-market analysis, the business model, all those things. A lot of that hard work gets done before they formally enter the program. This program is about putting all that together. So there's a lot of hard work that these guys put in long before they formally start the IRP.
Yeah.
So something that can't be said enough, there's no cost to the participants, unless you guys are getting ready to send us a big bill.
Yeah. Only after you close on that round.
Right. Which is amazing if you think about it, because they put together a very high-level support group to not only give you critical feedback, but then I think we met with 5 or 6 individually of the judges there on their own time afterwards. Gave us a lot of feedback, helped us adjust our presentation. And after that, you guys quickly put together a mock panel for Arch Grants. People that, we applied for the Arch Grants program. We made it to the final 50, and you guys quickly, I mean, like within a week, put together, you got the band together and said, hey, come in, practice your pitch, we'll give you feedback. And that was one of the most valuable things, and it helped us. We were able to get the Arch Grant, so we thank God did for that. And the elevator pitch, I know, is a new program that you guys have started. If anyone's here intimidated about doing the 10-minute pitch, start with the elevator pitch, which starts with, what is it, David, just 15 seconds?
Yep.
It's your first, it's your first start.
15.
So you gotta start somewhere, start with the first 15, and that takes on a life of its own, because you'll have a room full of people tell you what you're saying right or wrong in the 15 seconds. So there is a lot of, a lot of extreme talent and feedback given everything.
Those are some but yes, to the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Some of the more effective pitches I've seen have mentioned a pivot and applied product pivots. You mentioned yours. During the pitch, presenting your pivot, the challenges that you face, you overcome, and now you have a better product. And I think you have a compelling story as Rezilient. You identified a market, you had this idea, you did the research, found out that this might not be a good idea. And navigated the complex process of performing a pivot and keeping your stakeholders in mind and keeping them happy. Getting through that and keeping your investors happy, and then having a personal story that connects to your pivot, I think would be compelling. I'm not sure if this is a place to comment on the pitch or whether it's to comment on the business model. But I think that if you have a compelling pivot story, that could be something valuable to add into your pitch, if you have enough time and if it doesn't take away from something else.
No, I appreciate that, and that's actually was one of the things that we did when we were in the Mock Angels program. Now, those pitches were, what do we have, 15 minutes? Yeah, so it was a lot longer. I think for today's sake, I tend to not do that for like a short 3-4 minute pitch. But I completely agree with you that, I think in the end, especially when you're talking about angel investors, and I'll say even seed stage VCs, they're investing in you, the person, not really the product as much.
Right.
And I think a lot of times people have that backwards. And so when you're investing in a person and an individual, we, as human beings, we believe in stories. So the more compelling a story you have and the more personal it is, like that's what people gravitate towards. So I agree with you 100% on that.
Seems like you have good teachers.
Yeah,
Well,
fantastic teachers.
And I think that's one thing that is part of the feedback that the companies get on their pitches, is not just, is telling that narrative, because a lot of times, almost every initial pitch, it seems like somebody will say, you have something fabulous here, you can't tell it worth beans, and you're not telling the story right. There's so much more compelling, and we work on the structure and the narrative and the, leading with certain angles that get you, building it like you're talking about with the elevator pitch, building it in these sections that are important, but and not just check the box. Did I talk about my market? Did I talk about this? But building a narrative that makes sense.
And I'll add to that because I think it's important just for the mock angels in general. I think finding an EIR who's kind of willing to champion you through the process is extremely helpful. I'll say that Steven Von Runk was fantastic for us. He would pop into the office kind of on short notice and sit down with us for 2 hours as we worked through the pitch. And again, he was very big on, wait, you guys have a story here, like you have a personal story, you gotta get this across, and he even had stuff from his own life that he was like, no, this like really matters, you really need to tell the story. So I think finding an individual who can help you kind of usher you through that process is extremely, extremely helpful.
And doing the work, to Stephen's point, we have over 50 volunteer mentors that work closely with our companies, that all of our companies have access to through our platform. and to be reaching out and developing those relationships and working through those key business areas with those subject matter experts. You're going to get into the IRP sooner, and you're going to get through it faster because you've done the work to get ready. You know who your customer is. You know how you're going to reach them. You just need help building a compelling, story that investors are going to be interested in. So taking advantage of some of the other programs that we have, the resources that we have ahead of IRP is, also a really good thing to do as well. And, okay. I know we've had great questions, thank you so much, but I want to make sure that I give the Executive Director of Investment West, Phyllis Ellison, a few minutes, because I was excited that we are here on Investment West night as well, that we're sharing second Thursday with them. And did you sponsor food and I missed it?
There should be food out there.
Okay, yeah, so they're sponsoring the food, yay! And so on theme, we have companies now that are prepared to go and pitch at something like Investment West. It's coming back to St. Louis again this year.
So thank you all, and it is the perfect timing that we get to be part of the Mock Angel group tonight. And I hope to see some of them at Investment West very soon. So Investment West is our regional venture capital forum. So as companies moving along and are looking for $1 million plus investments, where they're getting to that level, this is the opportunity to get in front of 100 plus investors that are coming from across the country, venture capital firms. For those of you that are not familiar with Investment West, it alternates between St. Louis and Kansas City each year. And so coming up on April 22nd and 23rd, we will be hosting it here in St. Louis, and we will be hosting it here in Cortex. I'm very excited that we're going to be able to pull it out of a hotel ballroom and bring it into the St. Louis community so that the investors and the other companies that are coming here to the region get a chance to experience the St. Louis startup community that you are all a part of. So our deadline is for applications coming in is through January 31st. We're looking for companies in bio, tech, food, ag, and energy. Those are our main sectors. And we're looking for Midwest-based companies, high growth, meaning we're aiming for $20 million in revenue within 5 years. Obviously, that's a little different depending on if you're in the bio sector or some other, there's some other industry-specific things that might be in consideration outside of that. And again, seeking $1 million or more in funding. Tend to see asks between $1 million and probably $8 to $10 million. Occasionally, we get asks that are higher than that. The final pitches will be on April 23rd, and those are 8-minute pitches. There is prep and feedback from the committee as well, so that you have a chance to kind of make sure you're on target with the 8 minutes of time that you're spending in the story that you're putting together. So we're excited to hold it here. Mark your calendars. Hopefully you will be applying for this if your companies are ready. Also, if you are not part of the day and a half of events that are happening around the pitches, plan to be at Venture Cafe that Thursday, April 23rd, because that is going to be an investor night. So Investment West will be sponsoring that evening, including all the talks and highlighting and putting on display some of those companies that were part of the pitches. Capital Innovators is also moving their demo day, and they're going to be part of the afternoon of Investment West and a chance for the investors coming into the region to see some of the earlier stage companies as well. So stay tuned, there'll be more, but we're really excited to have Investment West in St. Louis this year, and starting our third decade of pitches, excited to be able to bring it hopefully a little closer to the startup community and give those investors a chance to see the great breadth of activity that we have going on there. So happy to answer questions. We also have an info table down at the far end by the bar, campus it. And thank you so much. We look forward to some people applying.
Thank you. For the application.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming tonight. If you have further questions for our companies, they're going to be right outside the door out of respect for the people that are coming in for 6 o'clock. Thanks so much. Hope to see you again next month on second Thursday. Thanks for coming.